This is a look at what comes inside Amati's 1 to 100 Chinese pirate junk wooden ship kit. Because don't all great model kits involve pirates? The kit is in 1 to 100th scale and does not represent a particular ship, but is meant to be representative of the type of Chinese ship called a junk. Junks were built to withstand rough seas, be highly maneuverable, and with a relatively shallow draft. The sails of the junk were unlike their European counterparts, being reinforced with bamboo spars. The spars gave the sails a shape much like an airplane wing and required much less rigging for sail handling. The spars also reduced luffing and chafing of the sails and reduced rotting, as was common on European sailing ships when the furled sails accumulated rainwater and spray. Junks have been in use in Southeast Asia for millennia, and were built in a variety of sizes from 30 feet long with a 12-foot beam to truly massive ocean-going ones with a 400-foot length and a 160-foot beam in the 15th century. These ships would have dwarfed Nelson's HMS Victory. Their main decks were not much smaller than a soccer pitch. The subject of this Amati kit has a waterline of about 40 feet and a beam of about 25 feet. Based on the 8 cannons and carriages provided in the kit, it is a mid-19th century rendition of the type. But enough background, let's see what's inside. The contents are well packed and protected for the long journey from Italy. A stiff inner box and plastic trays ensure the many fittings cannot easily go missing. Key to a modeler's success is a good set of plans. The construction is relatively simple. The typical plank-on-frame hull will require very little fancy scarfing or joining, as the course of the planks defines the lines of the junk. Also, a very bluff bow and stern simplified planking. Deck furniture is fairly minimal, but there are a number of railing systems that must be built up. Having been frustrated by uneven railings on my ships in the past, I am already picturing a jig to make the railings even, as they are very prominent on this model. Opening the poly bag holding the plans, the builder will find a booklet and a large fold-out plan. The booklet is rather terse, but adequate for the simplicity of the junk. However, if you are a Eurocentric ship modeler, as I am, you will still find enough detail to make the build successful. The fold-out plans have a very easy-to-follow rigging plan. There's no tangle of lines at the belaying rails as you would find on European ships. Junks were easily handled by a small crew. There's also a parts list and a 1-to-1 scale deck plan. As you would expect, the bulkheads and deck are laser cut. The laser has fully separated the individual pieces from the waste, save for a very tiny bit of wood tethering it in place. These are easily cut with an X-Acto knife and will yield a nice result. Along with the bulkheads and keel, there are some deck fixtures and a frilly pair of cradles for display. Although since these cradles are made of plywood, I would not use them for displaying this ship. The laminated plies would be very noticeable, looked on edgewise. If I'm going to spend the time to make this model look nice, I will invest in a display upgrade of brass pedestals or perhaps turn my own. The deck is similarly well lasered and approximately 1 millimeter thick. The lamination is very obvious and kind of ugly, but this is going to be concealed by the later planking and construction. On to my favorite part, the fittings. For the kit price of just over $100 US, there's a nice selection of bits and bobs to make the modeler's life easier. In the first of 2 bins, I found the 3 capstans to be particularly well made, and the pre-drilled holes definitely will make a nice result. It'll save me from using a lot of sailor language. Even the tiny dowels for the capstan bars are included. There are the typical boxwood blocks, all single in this case, and what looks like peril beads. However, these are actually for the mast and form the support for the halyards. The anchors of junks were very different from their European counterparts. Chinese anchors were made of stone, and Amati produces a wooden replica of this construction. A dab of paint will make a suitable stone appearance for these. The kit includes 2 ship's boats, or sampans. These are made of plastic resin. They're very nicely detailed, and they have a subtle wood grain. They're not overly symmetrical. Although these could be made to look like wood, I am already planning to make my own wood versions using these as patterns. I just can't put plastic parts on my wooden models. At first I was puzzled by what I thought were hatch combings. My European ship instincts were wrong, but I later determined these to be prefab gangways. Nice. This saves a good bit of fiddling with a razor saw and a file, and probably more sailor language. The second parts bin holds rigging thread of 3 sizes, brass eye bolts, prefab rings, a generous supply of escutcheon nails, and a bag of well-made cast metal cleats. There is also a nameplate, but I do not plan to use this, as a nameplate for a non-specific ship seems unnecessary. Also, it's rather garish, and as I said before, I avoid plastic parts on wooden ship models. The little boy in me is pleased to have 8 cannons to play with, to detail and mount on the model. The barrels and carriages are both cast, and the carriages are nicely detailed. There's also a supply of tiny rings that I will certainly lose several of during construction. I was disappointed to find that one of the cannons is defective in casting and lacks a trunnion on one side. I thought briefly about writing to the company, but I didn't want to be a Karen. This is a minor annoyance, and the trunnion can be replaced with a bit of drilling and a brass rod. It'll be unnoticeable in the final result, and I will not have to wait months for a replacement. A bit of rough fabric is included for mimicking the rice straw awning over the quarterdeck. I'm not sure I want to use this in my model, as it looks very, rustic. I think a patch of muslin or distressed cloth might be a better choice. Sails on a junk are one of its most striking features. Sails were spanned by bamboo spars to hold them semi-taut and to best harness the wind. This kit includes small dowels just for that purpose. The sails are serged along the edges and have sewn lines where appropriate to help bear the stress of the spars. As for the bulk wood in the kit, there's no surprises. Hull planking is 1mm by 3mm basswood. Deck planking is 1mm by 3mm beechwood. Other wood pieces are as expected. There are dimensions of wood that range down to the micro scale, and a sharp razor saw or razor cutter will be essential. I'm looking forward to starting this kit, and I'm going to start it just as soon as I put the final touches on a Spanish caravel that's on my bench. This is the first Asian ship I've attempted, and I'm looking forward to the research and learning almost as much as the actual building. I do plan to post videos as the build progresses, so if this sort of thing interests you, please join me on this little endeavor. Bye for now.